What is up, all you GBA type people? This is Tom. With me, as always, Crobat for the win.
Hey guys, Danza here.
And we are bringing you Week 7 GBA Power Rankings. Now, this week was very straightforward. Simplest way to say it. This week, the matches weren't crazy. The results didn't quite go the way you expected. But nonetheless, they were all good matches. Leading in, though, so we can start with you, Danza. Who's your bottom guy?
Alrighty. To be honest, number 12 and 10 kind of blended together, but
Sorry, 12, 10, 9, all kind of blended together.
yeah, I mean, they're all. It was so tough to pick who's bottom. They were all just so down low. But Crimson, honestly, he's been statistically eliminated, so there's no need to talk extensively, but I just feel like it was just absolutely sloppy planning and some sloppy plays. The most noteworthy one was running HP Rock on Jolteon for Mega Pinsir. I found that kind of depressing because Volt Switch is a KO anyways, so I don't even know why you'd think about running HP Rock. I'm sure he learned from it, and that's fine, but I just feel like that encompasses everything that was wrong with the game this week for Crimson and why he lost. So, just in short, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to agree with that. I think there were very obvious plays beside the whole Jolteon HP Rock thing. Like, yeah, it's a good idea. But wasn't he Specs this week? He was actually Specs Jolteon, not E-Belt.
I think so.
Well, regardless. I know this was already said in the recap, but the switch of Clefable into Excadrill out of Jolteon, that's like playing with fire. And even if it was a good switch, not sure defensive Clefable is going to live in Life Orb Ironhead. And then from that, the way he brought it in strongly suggested that it had a fire move or counter. Now, was it cool to see Life Orbed Clefable? Yeah, sure. Would I rather see leftovers on a Clefable? Yeah, sure. The only reason I have Crimson above Tup, now Tup has fallen below Crimson, and above a Nips is because the way he used Sableye early in the match. He played well around Infernape, and he played well just an early game, but I think Sableye kind of overstayed its welcome the second time Infernape had come back in. Clefable still died 5 turns from being on the field. Fucking count that one. I think it was good. He made decent plays like getting Whirlwind, using Whirlwind to get Magneton out. But the core issues come with the obvious plays that Crimson just does not identify. He lost all his walls to Hank's sweepers, so he only had sweepers before Hank even lost most of his sweepers. That's not good. But specifically, he could have switched into for Alligator against Sharpedo or whatever he had left when Sharpedo had gone for Protect. Now you know a Sharpedo is not going to outspeed a Scarfed Chandelure. Why do you stay in and go for a move? You know it has to go for Protect. Why not switch? I don't get it. And then the other thing is the fact that he goes for sub when he's facing a +1 Sharpedo. +1 speed Sharpedo, he goes for sub. That's not the right play. You don't get cheeky around threats, and the better play even was just to go for a water move. Like, you're going to kill a Sharpedo. It's made of glass anyway. I don't think that he necessarily played badly. He didn't play well. Oh, and also the discharge with Jolteon against Magneton. You have HP Rock, but you don't have a coverage move for Magneton. Did he just forget about Magneton?
Yeah, I would have rather seen ground.
He put himself in bad positions. He let Hank play the way he planned to do, and he missed very obvious plays. Now, he said it was hindsight. That's not hindsight. That's just you falling into the trap of your opponent's game plan. Bottom line.
Alrighty. So I don't have much else to say about Crimson. Just, I think it's time to look on to next season. Maybe experiment these last couple of weeks, and just look to get a better draft going for next season.
Oh, also, he's not eliminated this past week, but he will be eliminated statistically next week if he loses.
Yes, that is true.
So, yeah, like I said, he was my number 10. I'm going to go back down to 12, and I'm going to talk about Nips, because I have some things to say about Nips. So,
all right, let's hear it.
I think him leading off with Zam, big no. Zam is a revenge killer. It's not a lead. No. The crit freeze sucks, but that's going to lead me to my next point. Showdown also sucks. My issue with that is that Showdown kind of facilitates these unnecessary like crit situations, crit hacks, crit freeze. You know, you get the burns and the crits, the pairs and the crits. I think that it's not the fact that you wouldn't see that in a normal game. It's just, let's just do a side-by-side comparison. How often, and comment section you can agree or disagree with me, how often do you see a crit along with a status on Showdown versus in a Wi-Fi battle, or just even in game? Do you really? I don't see it, but I think it's incredible how often you see it on Showdown. That might just be my belief that Showdown kills the enjoyment of Mons, but that's just me. Anyway, Nip's looking at a roster that Geo still had Ferrothorn. That was an oversight on their end, from the GBA end. They need to update the rosters. He did have good enough sets. I like the Blaziken set. Personally, I liked Blaziken. I think he's used Blaziken better than he's used Halucha. And I thought Halucha was going to have a lot of good promise going into the GBA. I think at the end, he's really fearing that those HP grasses or those grass coverage moves with Quagsire, so he's putting his sweepers in a bad position. Now, yeah, that's smart to play like that, but sometimes it seems so paranoid that he's not writing down sets or whatever it is. The final 2 points, I think he lost in the final few turns. He lost to a crit. Okay, yeah, that sucks. But he also lost to a 50-50 because Geo could have went for HP Fire or Sludge Bomb in the final turns. He chose to go for the move that won him the game. I don't remember. Sorry, it's been a few days. But I do think that Geo just outplayed him at the end, regardless of the crit. But him saying that he said that he always, and I lose the hacks in Geo's match, where he said he typed it in the Showdown chat. It's the attitude that makes me put him in the bottom. Like, you don't say that. Like, yeah, it sucks, but you're invalidating your opponent by saying something like that. Again, you said it when you faced Cooper. You say it again when you face Geo. I don't want to hear it in the third week in a row. It's just not right. And you can say that I'm being an asshole for putting him so low for saying stuff like that. It's just, there were other chances that Geo could have won, like the Evire switch where the Evire got critted. But I'm just done with the comments. Like that, comments like that just to me are just so like low blow in the GBA. So
Yeah, and you know what? I'm in agreement with that definitely about those comments. I just feel like they're kind of unwarranted. Yeah, I get he's frustrated. I get, yeah, there was a bit of hacks there, but it's sportsmanship, and that's what I thought people in the GBA should have at times. Maybe it's not him being a bad sport per se, but because everyone has salt after these games.
yeah,
and that's understandable. A little bit's okay.
I think this is what we had in season 2. This should be like a 15-minute cooldown period. After a match, you do not talk to your opponent. You don't say a damn word to your opponent. You go to another room, you sit down, you contemplate life, and then you come back and go, I'm better.
There. That I think would be perfect. I think that would solve Nips's problem there. And that goes for everyone. It's not even just Nips. Because you know what? I know in the past I haven't been a total saint after I've been hacked, but that's what I think he's got to do. Just go into another room when it happens and come back in 15 minutes and say good game. It's all about sportsmanship. That's half the battle, in my opinion.
Or refrain from the comment early on and then think about it and then come back and then talk to your opponent afterward about the match or whatever. That's what I did.
Exactly.
I just, afterward, I talked to them, but not directly afterward.
An extra pro tip, don't do it publicly.
Yeah, that too. Especially when someone can see it.
All right. So, okay, that's been pretty negative. So let's get some positives in there. I thought he planned decently well. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I liked the Blaziken, like you said. Thought a lot of his plays were pretty well. The only thing I would say was maybe I know he fears the ghosts of HP grass and whatnot. Maybe he could run protect on Quagsire if he's that worried about it. Or how about like a grass resist berry? I think it's called like a Rhinzo berry. I don't remember.
Rhindo berry, yeah.
Yeah, run that maybe if you're scared of HP grass. I think that would be really interesting. Maybe run recover with that berry.
I was going to say, it gets recover, yeah.
So I just think that a little bit more creativity to think of things like that would help him avoid those ghosts. And next season, if he can keep stuff like that in mind, and if he can just cool down for 15 minutes, then I think he'll do a lot better. I really do. I do think Nips got a very good team this season, and I think if he drafts well next season, and he just tweaks his game a little bit, he'll be in a lot better shape, and I'd really like to see it.
Oh, the fact that he had screens on Cabellion to facilitate his sweepers to sweep, I think that was a good move. Sucks that didn't happen, but it was a good move.
I like that. And I wasn't going to dock him for the attitude as much because I think there's an improvement there. I'd like to see him continue next season to cut a little bit of the attitude. Just leave that at home and just continue better planning. I'd like to see more Blaziken sets. I'd like to see some Rhinzo berry or whatever it's called. I'd like to see maybe a Protect Quagsire, some just a couple creative sets along the way. We'll do him a lot of justice, and I do think he has potential. I mean, he probably hasn't heard me say that. I do have positive things to say about him, too, so there are a bunch of them I just said, so that's all I have.
All right. That was a good talk.
Yes.
Anyway, so finally, the guy in the middle, that Tup. Now, the reason Tup is below Crimson is because Tup, I feel like, is making these very detrimental mistakes. This is the second week in a row now where Steve's opponent, not Steve, hasn't had a check and a good plan for Mega Gardevoir. And Tup planned for one Mon. That Mon was Latios. Steve didn't bring Latios. Now my issue is, in the GBA, when you plan for one single Mon, when you think that one Mon rips apart your entire team, and you plan for everything. Now, the exception to that rule is Miguel and Gio's match. That worked. But when it doesn't work, holy God, you are in such a bad position. Now, I think it was good for him to plan that way, but remember, you're not just planning for one Mon, you're planning for every Mon on the other person's team. I've felt that side, for example, Hank felt that when he didn't plan for Gallade. I felt that when I didn't plan for Aggron. There are just things that if you overlook one thing, the worst can potentially happen. And it's kind of showing where Mega Gardevoir just ripped through Tups' team because he didn't really have anything for it. I do think, now, this is going to be like a chain idea. If he had gone for Trick on PZ against the Ferrothorn, that would have been a great play. But he doubted himself. He was like, no, I'm just going to go for a Tri-Attack. Tri-Attack wasn't the move to make there regardless. Hypothetically, he goes for Trick against Ferrothorn. That would mean that Ferrothorn probably, who's one of the slowest Mons, with the Choice Scarf, wouldn't have killed one of the fastest non-Mega Mons with Gyro Ball. And maybe wouldn't have killed Zam either, because that Choice Scarf maybe would have buffed it up at least enough that maybe the damage ratio for Gyro Ball wouldn't have killed Zam in the way that it did, and Tup maybe could have had a chance. But I think him not doing that and him doubting himself so much that is what killed me for him. Steve was in control the entire time in that match. Steve had the better team, and he just capitalized on Tup's not plays, like the plays he chose to not do and instead went for safe or just not fully baked ideas. That's why he's below Crimson for me, and why I had to drop him even more than I have been. I'm trying to have this faith, but it's not there anymore. Sorry.
I have him at 10. I kind of held Tup equal to Nips, but then that little bit of an attitude jolt kind of put Nips below. Tup always is smiling. He's always trying, so I hold that in high regard. So that's why I think he would be the top of the 1 and 6 teams. That goes a long way. That's half the battle, in my opinion, in these types of formats. Anyways, I genned his team, and he originally had Heatran, and I thought, that's great. Okay, you have something for Mega Gardevoir. And then he didn't bring it, and he changed it out at the last minute. So I was shaking my head at that. I don't know why he didn't bring it, because he let himself be vulnerable to Mega Gardevoir. The only thing he had for it was kind of Crobat, but Crobat can't even KO with a Cross Poison, unless it was Choice Banded.
Which is hilarious.
Quite frankly, okay, maybe, just maybe, he thought, okay, Mega Gardevoir is going to have the Hidden Power Ground. Well, if you're specially defensive, not only will it not KO, but you could also do two other things. You could run a Scarf Heatran with Flash Cannon, or... Alright, this is totally crazy here, but why not run a physical Heatran to hit Gardevoir on the defensive side, where it's really weak? Just an idea. You could run a Scarf Ironhead Heatran, for all I know. Something like that. Or run Shuckaberry, specially defensive, with Flash Cannon. Something like that, if you're that afraid of HP Ground. I can only guess maybe that's why he took it out, that he needed that for Mega Gardevoir, in my opinion.
Funny enough, my brain, first thing when I thought of physical steel move, I thought Magnet Bomb. It's late. It's late.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't even think Heatran gets that, but I really do think that Ironhead Heatran might have been to some benefit this week.
Or at least that mixed coverage.
Mixed coverage. I mean, it has a solid 90 attack. It's not bad. You could run a Sassy Nature with Ironhead and Lava Plume for Ferrothorn, of course. Whatever other coverage you might need.
Or Gardevoir only has like base 70 defense or something.
It's 68, I think.
Oh, there you go. Close enough.
Yeah. And its special defense is triple digits, I believe.
Yep.
So
yes,
there's a big difference. Even though Heatran's a bit weaker physically, it should still do more. Unless it's like a physically defensive Mega Gardevoir, which that's never going to happen. So
but that's the stuff you need to plan for.
Exactly. And I'm not saying he had to go that crazy, but I really think he should have brought Heatran at a minimum. And I would like to have seen like a Scarf Heatran with at least Flash Cannon, maybe Ironhead, or maybe a Shaka Tram.
There you go.
I feel like that encompasses why he's been having problems. He's making these big calculated errors every week. That was a mistake before the match. I mean, how could you get much worse than that at times? And I hate to say that because, like I said, Tup is the nicest guy in the world, but he's been choking a lot, and I want to see him get better. I really do. Like you said, I have this hope for him every week, and then it just never pans out. So I really hope that changes. I just want him to just relax, make a few safer plays. I don't make risky plays anymore. Just play safe, throw a couple middle ground plays in there, sprinkle 1 or 2 risks when they're calculated. That's it. That is it. Stick to mostly safe plays at this point if you want to try to at least get 1 or 2 more wins this season, because risky plays, and they're not working out for you.
Let's talk about his opponent. Steve, we both have at the same spot. I have like 3 things to say about Steve. Steve, I think that Scarf Lando T with knockoff is, even in the GBA, is bizarre. I thought that was bizarre from the first time I saw it in his planning video. I think Steve was in control that entire match. I think he had the right plan. I think he had the right mons. I think he just had a good idea and a good attitude going into the match. Go him. I think Shadow Sneak on Mega Gardevoir was very smart. It was effective because, like he said, the reasoning was if Mega Zam becomes a problem, go for Shadow Sneak, and hopefully if you had enough attack investment, that would one-shot a Mega Zam, or at least take it out from the point that it was at, whatever. It was smart. Didn't have to use it, but it was smart. And then finally, him fearing Heat Wave. It was a valid worry, and it was good for him to think like that. And luckily enough for him, it didn't end out that way. But good job for Steve picking up his second win now, and he's in a position to play spoiler as compared to just being like a nuisance. He can play spoiler some now for some teams. So go Steve, go Saucebucks.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, you talked about a lot of it. I thought Steve dominated the whole game this week. Huge improvement mentally. He wasn't making these really big, bold predictions all the time, which past 2 weeks he's been doing great with those, and I applaud him for that. That's why he's been seeing a move up, and even though he's kind of almost statistically eliminated, we can still appreciate that. He'll never rise above 8, actually, because 8 and 7 could possibly make the playoffs. But if he decides to come back next season, hopefully he can carry some of his momentum in these last 5 games into next season. I thought he would do that from last season. Unfortunately, that didn't happen so well. Anyways, this week I'm gonna kindly disagree and say that I do like the Scarf Landorus. I've used it in Standard. I've never used it in this format, but I've seen it used in this format. I think it works well with the U-turn. It does get knockoff. I don't have a problem with knockoff. You can run a hidden power on it. You've always got Earthquake, always Intimidate. I like it. I'm not saying you have to run it every week. I don't like it overused, but if you run it sparingly, I don't have a problem with it.
That's a good point. You're right.
So, beyond that, you kind of touched upon everything. He just dominated through and through, and I really liked that Shadow Sneak Mega Gardevoir. I thought that alone just shows that he is putting in the work. And if he decides to come back next season, then if he can put in that much work, as long as he stops those big, bold predictions, maybe he'll be able to make a run. Because at this point, 12 through 9 have to start thinking about next season, more or less. So that's why I'm just starting to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say, but good win for Steve this week. Maybe he'll somehow go 5-5, and we can all be hoping for him. I'd like to see it.
Yeah. Let's talk about John. I think that John got straight up manhandled by Miguel this week. I think Miguel just had the better plan, better play, and that was pretty much the bottom line. First things first. Now, this just might be how I think about my matches. Why bring Kieran Black? Miguel's team could not handle Kieran Black any better unless he had Skarmory or a Ferrothorn, but he essentially had Ferrothorn and Escavalier. Okay, Escavalier takes on Kieran Black even with HP Fire because Assault Vest, and then one-shots it with Iron Head. I learned that when I had to plan for Nexus twice. And then Mega Lopunny outspeeds and bops it, no problem. Victini, same thing, outspeeds it by 5 base speed points and could run Focus Blast or could just hit it really, really hard on Switch or whatever. And then Thundurus could T-Wave it. I don't understand bringing Kieran Black this week. It was only effective really against 2 Mons, and it wasn't even that smart of a bring. Didn't like it. kind of the first thing that stood out to me. Staraptor was a better bring for John in that position, and even Miguel had recognized that. If John had bring Staraptor, it could have been like an ace in the hole. Bravebird could have hit really hard. CC, whether it was scarfed or banded, probably a better thing. Hariyama didn't quite agree with that. I thought Hariyama was kind of like the weakest point of his team. Yeah, okay, it did damage, but Miguel had a Scavalier and a Powdon, so not necessarily the best thing for me. Poison Jab versus Powdon when he was trying to get the poison hacks. No, John, I didn't think that was something that John would try and pull for. Scarf Raikou was smart, it just wasn't good enough. And finally, as always, Miguel was in control, and he just showed that dominantly. And with John losing, and then with Cooper losing, like John had the potential to walk, to surpass Cooper, but the Cooper's had his, and we'll talk about that later. Cooper opened the door, John just didn't walk through the door. I think then it comes down to those two playing, so that's it.
All right, so I had John at 7, which he didn't move from last week. He lost in a very terrible manner, and Miguel just manhandles him, as Tom said. I didn't move him, though, because Shady moved down and Cooper moved down. Both of them lost, which put John in a better spot, even though John lost this week. I feel like John has a much easier schedule in these last 3 weeks, that he has the potential to just maybe sneak in there in a wild card spot. That's why I have him just on the cusp at 7. He's playing Crimson twice, and he plays Cooper. I think at the end of the day, what it's going to come down to is if he can beat Cooper in Week 9. If he beats Cooper, then he just maybe might take first in the division. And depending on how Shady does, maybe has a small chance at the wild card if he doesn't get number 1.
That's a very good point. I didn't think about that.
So that is why I kept him at 7, because there are ways for him to make it. They're difficult, but not undoable. That's why I had Gio at 8, was because his ways to getting in there are a bit more difficult. More difficult than even John has, because Hank has been doing a lot better, and he moved up to 5, and we'll talk about him after, but that's why I kept John at 7. It really didn't even matter how poorly he did out there. It was just everyone around him that mattered, Shady and Cooper. They did so poorly this week, they lost, and that keeps John alive.
Also, not to mention, Gio has a negative 10 differential, where John, I think, has +1. So that's true.
That's true.
That's impressively bizarre. So
I know. That's why, like you said, Gio stays at 8, because Hank is in a much better position with his wins right now. He's got 2 good wins in a row after losing 3 straight, which was very rough. And Gio's at -10. This was a good week for Gio, no doubt. It was, I don't know, he did get that ice beam, but Nips probably could have got around that as well. Yeah, I like that he brought Evire, and I liked the mixed Evire. There were some things in there. He made a couple of good predictions as well. It's not that Gio's playing bad. I just think he wishes that he had a few more games, so that way he could try to catch up to Hank. I'm not sure it's going to happen. I think Hank would have to go on another 3-game losing streak for that to happen, or maybe 2-game losing streak. Overall, Gio's not doing bad. Next season, though, I think we should watch out for him. If he doesn't make it this season, I think he's been learning a lot. He's been doing a lot better. Next season, he'll be definitely a contender. What are your thoughts on Gio?
Gio, I have very few points on. I think that Gio, he did play very well. It took me the longest to actually get through that match, just because I was trying to watch both ends and kind of piece together that puzzle. Thought it was kind of slow parts. Point is, Gio did incredibly well in scouting for coverage moves, whether it was intentional or not. He still made sure that he wasn't caught off guard, because I feel like one move in that match that would throw one player or the other off guard would kind of be the deciding factor, and maybe would have shortened that battle up a lot. But you know what would have definitely shortened that battle up a lot? Not getting a crit flamethrower against Electivire. If Electivire didn't get critted, I think Electivire with that +1 speed probably would have went bang bang through Nips's entire team. Nips's mons were so low that the good coverage that Electivire did have, I thought would have been enough to really punch holes, if not kill a few things on Nips's team. Bottom line, the only mistake I can really pick out on Geo's end was thinking that Quagsire was not unaware and that he was setting up against it, thinking it wasn't unaware. Come on, that's what Quagsire does. It was just a little nitpicky type thing. But like you said, Geo is on that very dangerous cusp. He's there. He can make the playoffs. It's just a very, very tall order.
Yeah, even worse than what John has once again. I will further add to your comment about unaware. I'm not going to defend Geo completely because you're right. He should have thought about that. But Water Absorb is a usable ability for Quagsire, so I'm not going to say he was totally wrong. Because it's not like it has Oblivious, which, I mean, something like that is useless.
No, that's almost useless. So
I mean, it's possible. I do agree, though, that it should have at least crossed his mind.
Earlier than it did. It did cross his mind when he set up and still did the same amount of damage, but earlier it should have been kind of more prevalent. Maybe he could have made a better play, but it doesn't matter. He won.
Yeah, we shouldn't nitpick too much because he won.
Right. Hey, it's what we do. We're analysts.
Yep. Bring it on.
So, moving on, we both have most of the rest of the rankings are pretty much the same. Cooper, number 6. Cooper, he played Malvone, and I was frankly very surprised at the result. I thought, initially going into the season, I thought Cooper would have given Malvone a run for his money, where this time Cooper kind of got the latter end of that. I think, so Cooper's team couldn't really handle Talonflame. That was kind of the bottom line. Cooper definitely didn't allow Smogon Bird to do a lot to his team, but it definitely he mitigated as much damage as he could, but it still did really put holes in his what he needed to stay healthy for later on, and we did see that. He was aware of things that he should be doing. He didn't make very bad over predictions. He didn't mess around with threats. When something needed to die, he made sure it died. He was also aware of Combine Clefable, and it was good that he prepped as such so that AV Dust Noir could not only handle its hits, but could also not get set up all over it. So that was good. It was also a good move of him not switching Blissey out against Weavile to ensure that he got damage and that Bliss didn't become setup fodder so that Weavile could essentially knock out all of his team, which would have been good for him in the MVP race, but not good for Cooper because that would have been embarrassing to let, Weavile just set up all over the pink blob. It was good, though, that he had kind of sought out that over prediction, and I'll make another point about that in a little while, but Cooper played well enough to not put himself in a super critical condition, but he's still kind of on that cusp. He did make some, plays. He should have went for T-Punch over Shadow Sneak versus Keldeo. Maybe could have killed it. But regardless, this loss proves two things. One, speed kills Cooper, and that's both literally and talking about Cooper. So, okay, reason I say that, Malvone had Mega Manetric, Keldeo, and Talonflame. All three of those things are superiorly fast to the point where he had nothing to outspeed it. But if Malvone had run a certain amount of speed, nothing on Cooper's team could handle that type of speed tier. So because of that, Cooper had no option but to defend, never offend, just stand back and take those hits, and then potentially try and make a move or make a play to get back in a at least a neutral position because he was always on a defensive position. That right there is so hard to get out of. Once you're in that slot, it is so hard to get out and make a play and try and get and have and create options when there aren't really options. It was good that Cooper was aware of what Malvone had to bring. It was just not good that Cooper had nothing to do when he was in that defensive position. So that's it.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I was just shocked that he didn't bring Zapdos. Yeah, I know Weavile is a thing, but I feel like he could have brought a core of maybe Vaporeon, Zapdos, maybe even throw in a especially defensive Mega Charizard X for Mega Manetric, or Blissey even. That's fine too. He does. I thought he had a lot of options there. He just made himself Smogon Bird bait, and that obviously is what happened. The problem I think with his team though this week was that he let himself be worn down. You're right. He was always on the defensive. It doesn't, even though he's a stally player, and that we've seen that before. But this week he couldn't because hyper offense. That's pretty much what Malvone brought. Weavile, Talonflame, Keldeo, Mega Manetric are pretty much hyper offense. They just wore him down over time. They broke it down. They broke down his core. I do think that the AV Dusk Noir was a very interesting twist on Dusk Noir, and I like the thinking behind that. I thought that was good for Keldeo. Um, I thought that was probably the highlight of the match. There are a couple times, yeah, he probably should have gone for Thunder Punch, but I thought that just the idea of it was his brightest moment this week. Overall, you already talked about several of the points I was going to bring up, so I don't have to rehash everything. But I just feel like he might have choked this one away a little bit by once again, like Tup not bringing Heatran, by not bringing Zapdos, because he let himself be Smog and Birdbait. And yet, it only got one KO, but it forced some switches, and it wore his team down. It helped to wear things down. And also let Mega Manectric finish off late game. And that's something you don't want to do.
Nope.
So,
Nope.
that's pretty much all I have to actually, I'll add a little more. What I want to say, the reason why I moved him down was because he's now in not as good of a spot. Shady also moved down, so they're kind of competing against each other now. They could be, potentially, for a wild card, depending on how John does. And John also moved down as well, so that helps him a little bit. He didn't move down, I mean he lost, I should say. That helps him a little bit, but because Shady also lost, and because he lost, he's still equally as close to John, and now he's close to Shady. So they're all very vulnerable right there at the moment. So that's all I have to say about Cooper. That's why he moved to 6. Keep in mind, Cooper, divide the number by 2, and you got 3. So you're not in a bad spot.
There you go. You can talk about Hank, right?
Yeah, sure. All right, so Hank. He's been improving. He's got 2 wins straight, so kudos to him for that. Let's just flip this page here. I've been doing pretty good with these pages, but for the first time...
Yeah, that's really good. The first time I heard it.
Yep. All right. I like that he did a good job of scouting this week, in my opinion. Moreover, Mega Pinsir ran a train through his team, or through Crimson's team, getting 2 KOs. All right. The funny thing about that is, he even had Skarmory, and he still couldn't defeat Mega Pinsir. I thought that was kind of interesting. Hank got a pretty solid 2-0 victory against the Steel Wings, and as we talked about, this wasn't a bad game per se by the Steel Wings. It was just a couple questionable calls, like the HP Rock Jolteon. I liked that he brought Magneton. I thought it was very interesting for the Skarmory. I liked seeing the Umbreon as well. I thought that was always pretty interesting. I feel like, though, the biggest reason why Hank did move up was because he was dominant this week, and we saw Mega Pinsir put in work. We saw Magneton put in a little bit of work. Magneton got 2 kills this week. How often do you see that?
You're right. Yeah, it's unorthodox.
So I thought that was great. He's up to 5 because he has a huge differential difference between him and Geo. And even if they had the same record, it would be more likely that Hank would end up making the playoffs. And I think Hank has a bit of an easier schedule than Geo does. So it's an uphill battle for Geo, as we said. Hank's in a much better spot. I put him ahead of Cooper because I like his team matchup over Cooper's, to be honest. I like the Mega Pinsir as well. I think that could break down a lot of Cooper's team if that matchup ever happened. So that's my opinion right there, but that's why I have Hank above. And also because Cooper's in a bit more of a dangerous spot. That's my thought about Hank.
Yay. So I think Hank, like I said, planned very well. He played very well. His sets this week were not only effective, they were thorough. I think it was good for him initially to think. He vocalized saying that he wanted to scout for counter against Crimson. He didn't fall into that whole, oh, I'm just going to assume he doesn't have it, or if he has it, I can handle it. He said out loud, if it has it, I'm going to handle it. I think he's been running a lot of the same sets. Whereas, someone like Dan who leads off with Mega Sableye every weekend, yeah, it's effective. Hank's been running weekly Sash Ape and Baton Pass Umbreon ever since he got it in free agency. If it works, it works. I can't bash that consistency if it's effective. Now, if it's not effective and it's like, you keep putting your hand on the hot stove and you get burned week and week and week and week and week, that's I got to criticize. But this is a little different. So good on him for that one. I think so. Later in the match, I think it was good for him to sack Infernape versus Chandelure to scout its set. It was potentially risky overall, as the match went on, but it worked out in Hank's favor because it gave him some very necessary information to help him out later in the match. I think the highlight of this match, and probably the most interesting part for me, was the fact that he was able to spin away the rocks as Skarmory KO'd itself and KO'd Excadrill. And he ensured that no rocks came in and that Magneton was able to come in and KO Skarmory. Sorry if I said that Excadrill KO'd Skarmory. But he was able to ensure that locking, that trapping, played into effect. He didn't play around. He didn't play any weird games. It wasn't a mind game type thing like with Mulvone and Miguel a few weeks ago. It was just effective. So good on him for that one. And overall, like you said, Hank is in a much better position, almost to the point that he could almost lock it up by like week 8, if not week 9, if certain things fall his way. Probably week 9, not week 8. But Chio's still nipping at his heels. Like one really hard loss at the end of the season could be the difference. But I think Hank is kind of bouncing back from that shaky period that he had undergone earlier this season.
And I think on that note, we're ready to move on to number 4, which is Shady.
Shady.
Keep it shady, guys. Alrighty. I thought that the first few turns were pitiful. I'm sorry, but when you're leading with Zelf and it's against Mega Sableye, yeah, I know it has Dazzling Gleam, but I feel like the Sucker Punch or the Shadow Sneak was so obvious, or at least there was a prospect of him having it. Maybe he would have gone for Will-O-Wisp. That was actually, to be honest, the first thing I was thinking. Maybe he would go for a Will-O-Wisp because he has the Prankster first turn, and it goes away after that. So I was thinking you might want to switch because he's going to go for a Prankster. But he went for Sucker Punch. That's fine too. Obviously, got a KO. I thought that Shady should have switched there and switched into something that would have been able to have taken a Will-O-Wisp or take a Ghost type attack or a Dark type attack. That's what I thought. I'm also not a huge fan of Baton Pass and Ambipom. I mean, I liked creativity and I think it could work. I just didn't think this was its best matchup. That's what I should say. It's not that I don't like it. I do like it. I just didn't think this was the right week for it because he's going up against a Chansey, and even if he goes into Superior with a boost of +2, not only can it boost by itself already, but Chansey's going to eat those for days. So, and Ambipom has pitiful special attack, so if he doesn't Baton Pass the boost out, it's going to do literally nothing to Chansey. That's my opinion. I like the creativity, though. He's still thinking. I didn't think it was a bad game, other than maybe those first few turns. I just feel like he lost the momentum after he knocked out Mega Sableye. I thought that was his biggest piece of momentum in the game, but after that, I feel like he kind of lost it after Superior went down, and I feel like that was his win condition. I feel like he needed more speed as well. He just, obviously, there was Chlorophyll Vileplume. No one would have expected it, but he needed, I feel like if he'd saved Scarf-Elf, that would have really helped him to beat Vileplume. And that goes back to that first turn. So, those were my criticisms about Shady's match this week. There were some positives in there, of course. Like, overall, I thought he played well. There was a good balance in there. But it was more like his B game. I would say not his best, but it wasn't bad. I moved him down because it's a little bit more difficult for him to possibly make the playoffs. He still should have it. But if he goes on a losing streak, then it would be possible that John could, or Cooper could, depending on how that division shakes out, could take the wild card spot instead of him. Once again, it's going to depend on how many games he loses in these last 3. If he loses none, he's all set. If he loses 1, I think he's all set too. If he starts to get to 2 or 3, that's when I think we're going to have a problem. So, for right now, I can keep him at 4, because I don't see him having that problem. But if he does, he's going to have to go down. I have some confidence in Shady, though, of course. I think he can do it. I think he can lock it out for the rest of the season. Just get a couple more wins along the way. That's all he needs. So, that's it.
All right, so with me, I think Shady lost pretty much all the momentum that he kind of has been thriving on these past few weeks. Now, again, they're not playing Dan, but he lost all the momentum that he has been using right from the first two turns. Getting knocked out turn one by sucker punch, like you said, and then preventing the setup with scissor with fire punch Sableye, which, by the way, didn't even realize the Sableye got fire punch. Awesome bring, but wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. He had to play from all the way back, and that's not a good position, especially from the first two turns. He did a good job trying to claw his way back. It was like a frivolous effect. Once now that enemy palm set, like you said, it was interesting. Wasn't necessarily the best idea, especially with Chansey still being around. But his real only chance to get back in that game was to go for Nasty Plot into Superior. He did what he could. It wasn't the greatest match. I did like some of the sets, more so Dan sets than Shady sets, but like you said, if Shady loses two of the last three, yeah, he might be kicked out of the playoffs. He's done really well so far in securing that spot, but if he continues to slide and slide, he's going to slide his way right out of the playoffs. Do I want to see that? No, but it's very possible with how John and Cooper have been playing, and especially with John's schedule. So
Yeah.
that's that.
And let's just point out that people have slid out of the playoffs before. Look at Alex in season 1.
Yeah.
That was a big slide right there. So we don't want Shady to be like Alex right there. So yeah, that's all I have to say on Shady.
What I have above Shady? I think I had Mulvone above Shady. Why did this freeze? Go up. Okay, I had Mulvone. Yeah, so I'll talk about Mulvone.
Go ahead.
Mulvone, real quick. He, again, I already talked about Cooper. He pretty much pushed Cooper's, what's it called in? He, Banded Smoke-On Bird really, really hit all of Cooper's selected, team. I say selected team because, like you said, he picked certain Mons that did well and certain Mons that didn't do as well against Talonflame. Zapdos would have been a better bring. He had way more revenge killer options, and this was something I kind of wanted to point out in this portion. He had way more options that could, if say one of his 4 threats had gone down, he had one Mon to come in and then pick off whatever had knocked it out if a Mon had died. Don't get me wrong, I liked both teams this week, but Mulvone he had it down with science. He knew what he wanted to bring, and he knew how it was going to be effective, and they were effective. He had way more offensive options, and he had much better ways to clear both how Cooper intended to play and Cooper's physical Mons that he had brought. Overall, it was good. It was good playing, especially that whole play where he had gone for Volt Switch over Rapid Spin on a predicted Dusknoir bring-in. That sustained his momentum, whereas other players might fall for that trap. And hell, we've seen players fall for that trap, but he didn't, and because of that, he brought it home. It was really smart of him, and it was kind of funny to bring special defense EVs on Weavile to prevent the surprise set that Cooper had brought with Blissey. Only nitpick I have is the wrong HP value on Mega Manetric. That, yes, it wasn't detrimental at that point. He kind of had the match basically locked up. But, who knows? If it was a different match, different world, different type of scenario, maybe that would have been really detrimental for him in terms of his momentum and even in terms of his potential to win that match. So that's the bottom line, and Mulvone played really well.
Yeah, definitely. I had no reason to move him. He beat one of the better competitors in the league, obviously, as we know. And the fact that he found a way to break down Cooper's defensive, stally-ish nature. He brought basically a hyper-offensive. A lot of firepower out of the Talonflame, the Weavile, the Keldeo, and the Mega Manectric, and Fortress was there to support along with Gliscor, neither of which died. Surprisingly, none of his walls died. So that type of offensive team just ran a train through Cooper's team, which was actually surprising. It shows that he's planning. People say Mulvone has beginner's luck or something like that. How on earth would beginner's luck encompass 6 games? I have no idea. I think he just has really good battle sense, and he's adapted to the format very well, clearly. Because if you see the team he brought this week, he brought a pretty much perfect team to beat Cooper. Hyper offense the whole way. Good job on his part. He deserves to stay at number 2. The only reason why he's not at number 1 is because I think Miguel is just that hair ahead right now. But he is a competitor. He's a serious threat. And I honestly feel stupid for having him at 12 in the pre-draft power rankings. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Big difference.
There is a huge difference. He's definitely one to beat, that's for sure. Him and Miguel and Dan and
Chicken nuggets,
for that matter too.
Yeah, easily. Is that all you'd say about Movone?
No, that's all I got. I just think he got a good win this week. He can stay.
Now, to transition from that, I think I put Dan above Movone.
You did.
Which some might consider shocking. Some might consider that that's justice. Some might still complain that he wasn't there before this. And if you are that person, shut up.
And wait, hold on. Someone will complain that he's not at number 1.
Shut up. That's so. Dan, that Sableye set was shockingly good and very impressive, but that wasn't the MVP of this match. That was Vileplume. Vileplume with the chlorophyll set. Wow is basically the only way I can really explain that. You know, he had 4 great coverage moves. He knew how long the sun was going to be up there, and he used it to tear apart Shady's team. The 4 coverage moves that he had, the grass, poison, he had a hidden power fire, and fairy move, was very, very effective against Shady's team. And, you know, I might have doubted him early on, and that first match wasn't a good showing of who he was as a player and who Shady was as a player. But if this match is a good showing, then I enjoy seeing this. I really do. This match was effective. Those sets were fun. They were good, and he's kind of showing that, yeah, he is the guy to mess with in terms of the Sinnoh Conference. Now, my hypothetical situation is I think that if Cooper and Shady get into the playoffs and they have to play one another, yeah, I think Dan could probably go to the finals. If John somehow sneaks in there, then maybe he'll have a little bit of trouble if he has to face John. Now, he already lost once to him, but he can adjust. If this is any indicator of how he can plan effectively and really show off what his entire team can do and not just 6 of his mons or 8 of his mons like I had suspected, no issues at all. He's got it. You know, good job.
Yeah. I'd say kudos enough just for being able to use a Vileplume. That's what I love about the GBA. You get to see things like Hitmonchan, which maybe not in this league, but in the NPL. Hitmonchan. You see
Ambipom.
Ambipom, obviously in the GBA here. You see Vileplume putting in work, which is just great. I really enjoy seeing it. It keeps the game fresh, in my opinion. Standard's so boring at times. It's nice to see these Pokemon work.
To your own horn, Jolteon Season 1.
There you go. And why not throw Fire Blast Gyarados in there? Because,
God
you know what?
damn it, I was trying to avoid that.
Someone will comment if I forget that, so I had to just mention it. All right, Dan, what more can I say about how impressed I am this week? I was definitely skeptical. I wasn't 100% sure about what he was going for at the beginning of the season. I wasn't sold on his first win over Shady, but I'm a believer. I thought this was an excellent game in his favor. That Mega Sableye with the Fire Punch, that is excellent planning in and of itself. I was a big fan of, obviously, the Vileplume with Chlorophyll. I feel like he took a page sort of out of Tup's book, so I can't give him 100% credit for the Sunny Day, because it was just used the week before, but the fact that he brought a Chlorophyll Vileplume, that's all his. I was thoroughly, thoroughly impressed. I think the only reason why I really can't move him up, because I have no justification to move Mulvone or Miguel down, but honestly, the top 3 are just the top of the top. They are the cream of the crop. They're the ones to beat, as I said earlier. They're all in good standing, and to be honest, I said this to Tom earlier, any one of the 3 could possibly win the whole thing, in my opinion. It really could come down to a damage roll, a little bit of hack somewhere along the way. They are all good contestants to win, and I think Dan just made the biggest step forward this week. I know it says +1, but in my mind, he went from being, okay, I'm a little bit skeptical, but he's been doing well too. This guy's the man. He's got it. So I think he's in a great spot. I'm pretty sure he pretty much has sealed the division now. I'm pretty sure, or maybe one more game and he definitely does. But definitely great job. Wow. Thoroughly impressed. Keep it up.
Yeah. All round applause from both of us. So you can round it out by talking about Miguel.
Alrighty. And last, but certainly not least, the man of the hour, the top of the top, Miguel. So Miguel, as usual, he dominated John pretty much through and through. I really like the physically defensive Hydreigon. That was just...
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Come on.
That's such a Miguel thing. And I feel like that's something I would do too. I'll make another example. Like when I played Gubs in Season 3, I had to run physically defensive Entei in order to take on the Mega Mawile. And it actually worked pretty well. And I think that's kind of what he was going for here, and I was a big fan of it. I thought it worked very well for him. I was very honestly happy when I didn't see Staraptor for Miguel, because I realized how much work it did to his team. The only thing I would say though is if he brought a Scarf Staraptor, I wouldn't say he was sunk necessarily at the team preview. It would have made it more difficult for him, but I feel like if he locked Staraptor into the wrong move, then he could have definitely worked around it somehow. And definitely Hippo would have been nice against Scarf Staraptor, which he obviously brought. Just, as usual, he was in control. I feel like he almost sort of won at the team preview because there was no Staraptor. He is the man to beat. And if his D-League experience is any indication of that, minus the one loss he had, which is mostly due to a happiness problem, which we don't need to go into that, this man's basically undefeated, more or less. And I don't know, he could go all the way. In my opinion, he possibly could. Go ahead.
I totally agree with that. He is the man with the plan every week, and he's the man to beat. Like you said with the Staraptor, he had Mons to handle that. Oversight on my end earlier to talk about that, but it's funny. Whenever I think of the GBA, I think of Apoudon's usability in the GBA. I never really put together how bulky it is. But when you look at its stats, its defensive stats, then you take into account that it gets slack off and all that. So it's really interesting to see just how well he plans. And the reason I say that, now, yeah, you already talked about physically defensive Hydreigon. That's a very good idea, and it was much better than I thought it was when he was talking about it. I thought, oh yeah, it's really cool. Then when I saw how much a Sacred Fire does, I was like, whoa, that's incredible. But what Miguel does, I don't think a lot of other players do, is they have Mons, and I used to do this myself, and it's not me, tooting my own horn. It's just he makes Mons that handle chunks of his opponent's teams, or large portions of offensive and defensive Mons, not just one Mon. This is such a critical thing that I see a lot of people do, whether it's this league or the NPL or some other league. It's just the fact that there are players out there who can understand how to prep one Mon of theirs for 4 of maybe your opponent's Mons. And 4 Mons, you're thinking, wow, what if they're spreading that Mon too thin? Well, if they can do it effectively, you can see how well it really does pan out for that person. And Miguel's a perfect example. He's playing well. His offensive Mons are really good. His momentum is always intact somehow. There's never a point where he loses. And in this game, for example, he won a team preview. And that is so powerful. The Focus Blast miss that he had to, endure, that was probably the only unfortunate part. If anything, it gave John 1 less differential in his loss. But the point is, Miguel's doing everything right, and like you said, he's the man to beat. And if the D-League is any indicator, I think he's going to learn. Maybe not learn, but I don't think he's going to have that same thing happen to him. So
yeah, and I feel like, all right, I'm a firm believer that there is some sort of magical method with having defense on your team. Have 1 defensive wall, 1 specially defensive wall, and then a half a wall. And what I mean by that is bring something that's a bulky attacker with that's sort of defensive. I don't know, I'm just going to say a name. Golem, for example, is very defensive, like a bulky attacker. Or bring something with an AV, like Hitmonchan, I don't know.
Like Melodic or Latias.
Yeah, I mean, something that can carry an AV or something that just has good natural special bulk. So sort of like half of a wall. And if you can do something like that and build a good core around having one defensive wall, one specially defensive wall, and one half of a wall, whether it be with an AV or just bulky defense, with 252 attack or special attack, you got something good going. And I think Miguel is the master of that.
I think Conkeldurr even filled that role for me.
Yeah, that's perfect. Conkeldurr's like that half of a wall right there, because it can take hits very well, and
Recover them off.
It's even better because you can heal them right back off. So
yep,
that's also why I said Hitmonchan.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So
bottom line, we're starting to see this playoff picture, really unravel to the point where it's really hard to make radical changes or even justify dropping someone really harshly unless they really do make that mistake.
Yeah.
The players that are playing well, like I said last week, are the ones who are dominating or showing that they are prepared for the playoffs. The ones that aren't, maybe not as such. But okay, Dan, hope you guys enjoyed the power rankings, and as always, we look forward to your comments and your discussion in the comment section. Always fun to talk with you guys and see what you guys think. So leave your comments and concerns and all that.
Yes.
And we look to talk to you guys in week 8. I'm Tom, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Peace.